Okay, so good morning. Thank you guys for getting up and being here so early. I'm Stephanie Race, and I'm the head of research and outreach here at the library. And with me is Lauren Newton, who is our head of instruction. And we're going to sort of team teach this session today. We are recording. I'm going to try really hard to remember to repeat your questions so that people who are on the other end can hear those. I listened to the recording from last year's session, and it was kind of funny. It was funny to listen to myself, but it was also, I realized it is important for me to repeat the question because there are some questions I answered where you couldn't tell what the question was. So we're going to try really hard to do that. Today is a longer version of what we did in the fall. And so I'm going to do a little bit of refresher, but I did want to start. You guys have been doing this. This is third semester for you. I've seen a bunch of you on campus a lot. It took me a minute to figure out why I recognized you, and then I realized who you were. But I am curious, are there specific things now that you've been in the program for 2 semesters, you've done a little research, that you want to make sure we talk about today? I have a whole list. No fears.
I like the advanced search refresher.
Okay, and that's on the list, so we'll do that. Okay. Anything else? Nobody's had any problems? Do you all still have Refworks accounts? Has anybody used their Refworks account?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's one of those pieces that we're going to go through a brief overview of it, just a reminder of some of the things you can do with it. And so we will step through those. Anything else? Anybody done Interlibrary Loan? Not yet? Okay, so we'll talk about that again. A couple of you have, but some of you haven't, so we'll talk about that again. Okay, that just that helps me a little bit. So this probably won't go till 11. We've had long conversations, and I will pick on Katie a little bit. We discovered after your last session that Katie and I have known each other. I met Katie when she was tiny, and she has been a great source of help for me in terms of getting questions answered about what should I prepare for. So we're going to start with the front page of the library's website. We're going to do a little bit of the refresher, talk about the services. As with anything like this, if you've got questions, ask them when you have them, because if you hold them, contextually they may not make sense, you won't remember them. So just as you've got questions, wave at me, holler at me, but just go ahead and ask those questions. So from the library's front page, which is www.unf.edu/library, there are a lot of services that you can access. And so we're just going to start with that brief refresher. We won't go into a great deal of detail, but just a reminder that if you go to the library tab, under My Accounts are the services that you can use and the services that I think you're going to want to take advantage of. A reminder that you need to use the remote access if you're logging in from off campus. So all of our people who are on recording, the remote access is going to be really important for them, because you can't get into the good stuff in our resources. You can do some searching, but you can't necessarily pull up the full text of things that we have access to. So you're going to log in with your N number and your password. It's a pretty simple process there. Want to talk a little bit about Interlibrary Loan. Some of you mentioned that you used it. Did it work well for those of you who've used it? Any problems, issues, concerns? No? Okay. So Interlibrary Loan is the service that we use to get you articles that we don't own. So if you're doing your research and you come across an article that we don't have full text of, what do you typically do when that happens to you? Move on to something else. That's what everybody says. You are at a point in life when you are no longer allowed to do that. You have outgrown that. Y'all are going to be taking care of me when I'm old and sick, and I want you to not move on to something else. So when you find that great article, Interlibrary Loan is the service that you can use to get that article. It is a free service that we provide for you. Typically, it takes 3 to 5 business days to get things. I have seen things show up in less than 2 hours. So it's not something, you are working far enough ahead. Most of you are not waiting till the last minute to get your research. You can't with the projects that you're working on. So you're going to have time to get the articles. But really, at this point, you really don't want to skip that article that looks really good just because you can't get it immediately. So go ahead and submit an Interlibrary Loan request. The Interlibrary Loan requires that you to create an account, and we're currently using a system called Iliad. Your username and your password, your N number and your password. We're currently using Iliad. On June 19th, we are migrating to a new service called Tapasa. The names don't mean anything. But what it will mean is it's going to look a little different. So for those of you who are using it, if you've put in a request in Iliad, it may, if it happens over that rollover period, it's going to come back to you into PASA. Your username and account, all that stuff will stay the same. The active requests will move over. So if you've put in a request and we haven't filled it yet, it's going to roll over. If you've got anything in your Iliad account, so if you've got an article that they sent you and you're just saving it in your Iliad account, you're going to need to download and save all of those things. There's going to be reminders sent out, but you guys are in that transition stage where I think there may be some of you who are using Iliad, and I wanted to make sure it looks like this today. In a month, it's going to look like something else. So just be warned that the Interlibrary Loan is going to change. And then the last thing that I want to talk about under my accounts is the Refworks. And anybody not have a Refworks account in this room? Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and log into it, talk briefly about it, because I also think that everyone online has used it. But just as a refresher, Refworks is our bibliographic management tool that we use. You may have used Mendeley, you may have used EndNote. It's very similar to that. But Refworks allows you to collect your bibliographic citations into one place and manage them in a space. And then it allows you to then use that information to create the bibliography for your works. And so I am going to go into, what do I want to look at? I want to look at my folders. And I feel like we had a folder for y'all. Well, maybe not, but I'm going to pull open this. It's got some things in it. And I want to I've got 6 citations in this from a class that I did. And if I select them all, just a reminder of what we can do here, I can click on the Create a Bibliography, and it's going to, as you remember, instantaneously create a bibliography for me. Now for this class, you all are using APA citation style. So you can see the last thing I did was in the AMA citation. And so at the top of the screen, it's showing that it's AMA. But for this, you need it to be in APA, and in your head, you're thinking how much work that's going to be. But in reality, we make that switch, and it automatically converts my citations. Reminder that these are all computer-generated citations, so they're only as good as the information that's provided for them. We're going to pull that information from the databases. So if the database sends over something that's not as pretty as we'd like it to be, so maybe there's some extraneous information. Typically the kinds of things I see are there's an email address attached to an author's name. There may be something's all not capitalized that should be, something's in all caps that shouldn't be. Those are the kind of things that typically stand out to me. Then you do want to make sure you check for those because they're not going to be perfect, and your professor is going to note that. One of the other things that typically happens in this class is that your citations really do need to be pretty perfect. And so you do want to make sure, do you all have the citation manual? Okay, I thought that was a requirement. We also have a tool, if you picked up the highlighter, we have an APA citation style. It's called Academic Writer. It's a tool that we have online that you may want to use. It provides a lot of examples. There's some tutorials in it, but it's for writing an APA style. It may be a source that you want to use, and I can show you how to get to that. But Refworks will create your bibliography, and just as a refresher, Refworks will also help you with your in-text citations. So as you're writing, this is the part for me. I always had a problem with in-text citations. So if you're writing your paper, and you see that I can't type. So you're writing along and you need that citation to be imported, and you just keep, I always just kept writing, and then I just kept going, and I at some point wanted to put it in. There is a tool that you can add, and so if I needed my citation to be here, there's an add-on tool within Refworks. Have any of you used this one yet? Okay, so we'll go into Refworks and we'll talk about it. There's an add-on to Refworks that allows you to manage your citations. And I'm demonstrating within Google because of administrative privileges, but if you're using Word, you can do this in Word. There's an add-on for Word. It's really simple. I did it, and I feel like if I can do it, it can't be too hard. Any of you using Macs? I can see one from here. So the instructions are slightly different for the Mac. If you have problems with that, we can help with that, doing that installation as well. So here you can see I've got all of my references. I can choose from a specific folder, so I could go down and pick that same folder I was in before. And this is the article I want to cite. This is the part that makes me really happy. It has now added my Intext citation to my paper and started my bibliography for me. And if I add something else here, because I forgot to put one ahead of that, it's going to add it in, and it's going to automatically do that alphabetized list at the end for you. So this is one of the features as you start working on the project for the semester. Okay, so for those of you who are online, we had a little battery issue. We're back. For those of you in the room, we're going to check on the up-to-date issue, and we will, if we don't have an answer by the end of the session, I'm embedded in your Canvas class, and we will get an answer to you. So, and I know that that one's important. So I was mid-sentence when we lost power, and I don't know what I was saying. So the Intext Citations, it allows you to do this as you work through your projects. For your PICO questions, this is going to be important. This is the kind of thing that we can also assist with in your research consultations, and we're going to talk about that and do a refresher on that as well. But the Refworks account or some type of citation management tool is really going to make life a little easier for you as you work through your projects through the rest of this program. So I'm going to go back to the library page. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm not. You guys asked for the tool. Sorry. We got distracted by the batteries, and now I'm... So the ability to do the citations piece of that, the tool for the citations piece, there are two places that you can get to the tools. Next to the little cog in your Refworks account, there is an option for tools. And that's where you can find, if you scroll down, there's the Cite in Microsoft Word, and that's the app that you want to install in order to be able to do that easy citation. That's the, I use the Google Docs one. It's simply a permissions piece here in the building. But the Cite in Microsoft Word is what you'd want to use for home, and you can install that on whatever machines you want to do. But it can sometimes be a little more difficult with Macs, but we can help with that. The other tool that we have, and we're going to demonstrate this as we get into looking at PubMed, is the Save to Refworks tool. And the Save to Refworks tool allows you to add information from various resources that don't automatically upload information. Have any of you experienced something where you've been in a database and it won't easily take the information to Refworks? Okay, the Save to Refworks is the tool that makes that a little easier. And if you haven't installed that, it's a pretty easy installation. You click on Save to Install, you drag this little guy up into your toolbar. If you have a Mac, sometimes that's a little different. We also have instructions for that, and I think I may have added those instructions to the library section on your Canvas site. I think I put them up because I knew some of you used Macs. But the Save to Refworks, if you're searching in PubMed, and you will be searching in PubMed, is going to make things a little easier. The other tool that is available to you that I have found to be really useful with this project is the Find Duplicates tool. So as you work through this project and through a couple other assignments, you're going to be searching, and you have to search 4 databases. So you have to use CINAHL, you have to use PubMed, you have to use Cochrane, and then you get to choose a 4th database. But what you've probably found as you've been searching is if you search in Cochrane, or you search in CINAHL, and then you search in PubMed, you get some overlap. Have you experienced that yet? Okay, seeing some nods. You get some overlap. And then how do I get rid of that overlap? And Refworks actually has a duplicate removal tool. So you can use the Find Duplicate tool to remove things. So if you stick all of your items in a folder, run the dedupe option, it lets you take those out. One of the things I do, because I'm always nervous that I'm going to lose things, is I always make sure I have a copy of my folder before I start deleting duplicates. I'm just very fearful that I'm going to delete something I shouldn't have deleted. So that's just me, as I'm super nervous about that kind of stuff, especially when I'm doing it for a student or a faculty member. I really don't want to delete your best citation accidentally. But the deduplicating tool is super helpful. And again, that's the kind of thing when you get to that point that we can help you with. Other questions about Refworks, things you've experienced or somebody has said you could do that as you've been using it for the past couple semesters? Nope. Okay. So things may come up as we talk through and as we demonstrate the different services we have. So then the other service that I've mentioned, and I'm going to continue to mention, and I really would encourage you to take advantage of, is the research consultation service. How many of you have used that yet? Not yet. This is the semester where it might happen. So under the student option, there is an option to do research consultations. And this is a service that we provide. Our team of instruction librarians will meet with you one-on-one in a variety of ways to help you with your research. And so you can do this in person. So if you come to campus, you guys are coming to campus on Fridays, I think. You could schedule an appointment with us on a Friday while you're here. You can schedule at your convenience. You can also schedule to meet with us online. So for those of you who are listening, the people in Tampa, people who are other places, we can do this online. We use a service called Blue Jeans. It's very similar to Skype. And the nice thing about that is you're online, but we can share screens. So you can see what we're demonstrating to you and how to find the things. And then we can also do this on the phone. And then we can also meet with you someplace else on campus. So we can meet with you here in the building, or we can meet with you somewhere else on campus if that's more convenient. And it's a pretty simple process. We did have mine blew up this week because I didn't change my passwords and Lauren rescued me. So you can do a couple things. You can choose, I don't care who I meet with. The no preference gives you it gives you a much broader variety of access. So no preference means whenever somebody's available at the time you want to come in. So if you wanted to come in next Friday, you can see we have availability at 8 and 2. That seems, we have something happening next Friday. That's why our availability is bad. But you can meet with somebody 8 o'clock, and you would be getting Becca. The appointment would be with Becca. You would tell us about yourself. So we need to know who you are, an email, your N number, what you're studying. Where do you want to meet? So you choose where you want to meet. How many of you are coming? So you can come by yourself, or you could do this as a group. We can do the online sessions as a group as well. So if you're working with a partner and you're in one place and they're in another place, we could do that online session as a group. And then the really important piece is that you tell us what you need help with. And if all you say is, I need help with my PICO question, all that does is tell me, well, tell some of us we really don't want to help you. No. PICO questions, what you all do is different than what everybody else does. If all you say is, I need help with my PICO question, it doesn't help us prepare for you. But if you say, I need help with my PICO question for whatever class you're in, and this is my question, and this is where I'm having problems, then we can actually do some homework and be prepared when we meet with you. Typically, what I think most of us do is, if what you send is, I need help with my PICO question, we then follow up and say, can you tell me what your question is? Because it does help us identify, and I've looked at some of the things you guys have submitted as what you're thinking about, and we're going to use some of those as examples today. But it does help us determine what's the right word to search, which are the same problems you have. It just gives us time to do a little practice with that. And so that last question on here is the most important piece of this, other than your contact info. But telling us what you need help with and being really explicit about that is going to be really important. With the appointments, if you have a preference, so if you said, okay, Lauren and Stephanie did my session, I want to meet with Stephanie, and this is part of why the no preference makes a difference. I'm currently unavailable because I messed up my system. I'm going to try and fix it today. So we'll pick Lauren because I don't have any availability. If you pick someone, then you'll notice that our availability definitely changes. It's matching to our actual calendar. So unless we mess it up, it's not going to let you schedule time when we're not available. So if you wanted to meet with Lauren on Monday, you can see when she's available, and then it's just the same process. So you can either go no preference, or you can pick a specific person. I can tell you, Becca Durney and I probably do the most of the consultations with students from the College of Health. But any of the librarians really can help. I was teasing about the PICO question part of it, but Becca and I do most of them, but any of us can help. And take advantage of this service. So as you're working through and you're not finding what you want for this project, take advantage, don't wait till the end. What I'd really say is, if you spent 45 minutes, an hour looking for something and it's not coming up, ask for help. And it may just be shooting me an email and saying, this is what I did, what would you recommend? Or it's making an appointment, which, whatever works for you, we'll figure that part out. If the time that you need isn't available, you can email us and we will try to fit it in. We don't have any evening hours open.
During the summer.
Because it's summer, our schedules are a little different. So if you needed an evening appointment, send a message and we will try to make that work. We'll find somebody who can meet with you. Questions about consultations? You are going to use those? I do think that's going to be an important piece for you. Okay, so we've talked about sort of the servicey pieces. I guess the other one is, are any of you coming in the building and using the building, those of you who are on campus? Okay, so some of you are actually coming in. I do want to remind you, we're in summer, so our hours have changed. We are very much on reduced hours. Okay, I just got to look like, yeah, that doesn't help us. So the schedule is always here, and then you can see the full schedule of hours. We are only open till 10 o'clock, so I gather somebody in the back of the room is a late night person. Yeah, so we're only open till 10 o'clock during the week, and we have much reduced weekend hours. But I hate for y'all to be coming on campus and not having us be here. Okay, so some searching things. Want to remind you about our LibGuides. So if you, under library again, under general, there's a tool called Library Guides. And if we scroll down, you can see the guides for the different colleges. So if we look under Brooks College of Health, we can see the guides that are there. And we have guides for the different programs, different disciplines. Specifically for y'all, we're going to look at the nursing guide here. And there are a number of things. Have anybody in the room used this? Okay. So we probably didn't talk a lot about this in the fall, but this is a place where I think you're going to find some tools that are helpful to you. So the nursing guide, we try to pull everything together that's of use to a specific program. So we've got links to the various nursing databases. There are some database tutorials that you can get to from here. But the pieces that I want to look at specifically are, I want to point out that there's some information here about PICO. And you guys are going to be writing your PICO questions. You've written PICO questions before, correct? Yep. So there's information about creating the PICO question. There are some guides and some examples that you may want to use. There's some sample worksheets. In the front, if you didn't pick it up, you can before you go. There's one that's called the Structured Searching PICO. It's the one that I like. I might have actually given it to you in the fall as well. It helps me sort of plan out what I'm going to do for my search. And so I'll just open it up so you can see what it looks like. But it helps me think through my question and then think through how I'm going to use that to create my search within the database. Gives me some, thinking through the synonyms, as we've talked about previously, as you construct your search, coming up with the synonyms, making notes about what are the mesh terms that I want to use or don't want to use, and then some of the limiters that you want to think through. And then there's the reminder. Somebody asked about the advanced searching. There's also the reminder about how or and works. And we're gonna talk about that again, but there is the reminder that the or allows you to combine together those relevant terms within the same aspect. So your synonyms. For me, or is always about synonyms, and then the and allows you to combine the different aspects. So it's kind of a P and I and C. So those different aspects all get anded together within our search. So I just wanted to mention that there are two others that are there that you can use. I really like this one. Also, as you work through, depending on the assignment and where you're going, there's a Prisma flow diagram here. There are some tools for doing the systematic review. So as you're working through the systematic review, there, and then also the link to Refworks is here as well. So just we've gathered together some resources that may be useful to you as you're working through the program. The nursing databases one, list of nursing databases. I'm going to open another library tab just because we're going to look at things in a couple different places. So I'm on the nursing LibGuide. The list of nursing databases is here. Have you all been going to the nursing databases through the Find databases? Okay. It's exactly the same list. So I don't want you to think we've been hiding something from you. So you can get to it either from the nursing LibGuide or from the list of databases. I'm going to go back to the home page and walk through this slowly. So from the library's homepage, under Find Databases, we have all of our databases listed, and then you can get into the subject guide, subject listings, so we can get to the nursing list from here. Same exact list, just multiple ways to get to it. And once you get to this list, then you also have contact info for Becca and I as well, if you needed to get in touch with us for something, or you can make an appointment for a consultation. Okay, questions yet? Did I do anything that you haven't seen, you don't know about? I'm checking your, okay. I thank you guys for nodding your heads, it helps. It really does help. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get in to the searching a little bit. And so I'm actually just going to go from here, from the database guide, because I do know that most of you come this way. And as we go through, I'm going to start, you all are looking, so for your assignment, and I don't really want to teach the assignment, but I do want to reference some of the things that you're going to have to do. You do have to look at CINAHL, Cochrane, and PubMed. Those are the three that you're required, databases that you're required to look at. And then you can choose a fourth database of your choosing. And so there are some things here you might want to look at on the recommended list, but I don't want you to miss out on the things that are farther down. So depending on your topic, one of these databases that's farther down the list may be appropriate. So I'll just scroll through, and so there are some psychology databases that may be really appropriate depending on your topic. I'm a huge fan of Web of Science. That's one that I really like. It searches a little differently, and we'll talk about that. You also have access to UpToDate, and so that may also be an option if we can get all of your accesses reset. We will figure that, in one way or another, we're going to figure that one out. So I am going to start with CINAHL for our searching and for our conversation about subject headings, and putting together the question. So I'm going to just log into CINAHL, remind you that if you're working from home, you want to make sure that you've done that remote access, the remote login, to make sure that you have full access to things, because it does definitely expand what you're going to be able to use. So within CINAHL, I'm a fan of, I guess if I expanded my window, I'd get a better picture. Within CINAHL, we drop you right into the advanced search screen. So we're going to ask your questions as we go, because I think you've got a couple questions as we go along through here. I'm going to use one of the topics that you all have identified that I think somebody's talking about, and I don't know which group this is, but somebody was talking about is using nitrous oxide during labor for patients who don't receive a regional anesthesia safe and effective at reducing pain during labor. That was somebody's topic. Are you still, is whoever that?
She's already CRNA.
Okay. Okay. So that was one of the topics. We're going to work through this one. It's funny that the person's not in the room. That's the one I chose. We've got another one, and we can use another if somebody wants us to try their topic. So I want to work through this and talk about creating the search and thinking through how you're going to combine your terms, how you're going to come up with different terminology that you'll be using throughout. This one was kind of interesting to me because when I work on a search, I like to use what the student gives me. So if this is the way you write a question for me when you send it to me, I'm assuming this is probably the way you're searching it. And so, and Lauren and I talked about this with what happens when you search N2O. What does the system do? Thoughts on what it does? Changes it to H2O. That was an idea. Other thoughts on what it does?
Probably gives a bunch of search results with like N in them and 2.
Okay.
Like
That's actually what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to like looks for the N's and the 2's and the O's.
Does it get rid of it?
It actually searches for it. So, and that was interesting because, and I know I've done some chemistry classes, and that's how, and using the 2 in that way, that's how it works in some of the chemistry databases. So I really thought it was going to do more of the, it's going to look for N's and O's, and I'm going to have some crazy stuff. But the N2O actually worked. It didn't work as well as nitrous oxide. But it is a thought that you can actually use the terminology that you're thinking to get you started. I was lucky that in the PICO question description they'd actually said what N2O was, because I apparently my high school chemistry didn't stay with me. But it was, for me, it's the kind of thing, if you had sent me N2O and I had searched for it, it would have prompted me through creating that search and helping me develop that search. The other piece that's helpful, and that's really helpful as you all are writing your questions, so as you're working through that discussion with each other and with your professor, what's really helpful is the things that come out of that discussion. So sometimes, and I just had this happen, and it's a weird analogy, but I was ordering a picture, having something framed, and I took it in, and the person at the counter started talking to me, and it was this weird conversation. And as she talked to me, she kept pulling off different frames, and I kept like, oh no, and oh yeah. And she said, the more you talk, the better I can do this. The better I can do my job because I get a better sense of who you are. The more you talk through your question, the better you understand your question. And so if you meet with me for a consultation, I'm going to make you talk about your question. I'm going to have you talk about it and describe it to me, because the more you talk about it, so those discussions you're having online and the information and the feedback you're getting from your professors, helping you formulate a question that will work and help you develop a question that is searchable. Does that make sense? So it's that conversation that happens that just really helps you. And I imagine it's the same kind of thing that happens when you're talking to a patient on the floor. The more you talk to them, the better you understand what's wrong with them. The better you understand their environment, the situation that they're in. So that conversation is really going to help you develop what you're looking for. So as we look at this, and because you've done this before, I'm going to expect you to help me. So when we look at this, and we're looking at creating a PICO question out of it, what are some of the key aspects that we're going to look at here to develop this into a searchable statement? I can't type. Anything else? Anything else? No? Yes? Maybe? Okay. So we've got 3 different concepts. We've got N2O, we've got labor and pain. And it was interesting because when you guys said labor and pain, are you thinking labor and pain is one concept? I kind of did them as 2, but then when I heard them, I kind of heard them as 1.
No, separate.
You're thinking separate. Okay. Okay. In my head, labor pain is one thing. I've not been there, but I think it's one thing. So, but you're thinking 2, and it's important to think through that. How do you say it versus what are you thinking you want to do with it in the end? So we've sort of got 3 different concepts here. One of is there an unspoken concept in this search? Is there an unspoken thing? Who your population is? Who's your population?
Laboring mothers.
Mothers, okay. So it's an unspoken thing that we've kind of set aside, but as you're doing your search, this is the kind of thing, and I don't know this to be true, but this is the kind of search where we're all assuming this is only going to bring us back female women mothers. Who else gives birth? Animals. So one of the things that may happen is you may do your search and discover, oh, wow, lots of these results have to do with monkeys. And suddenly you realize, okay, that unspoken thing I might want to add in is, can I just tick off a box for humans? Not sure that would happen, but it does sometimes happen with y'all's stuff where I'll be working through a set of results with a student and be like, why do we keep getting all these monkeys or these dogs or whatever? And then we realize we just need to tick the human box. And so we're going to look at some of that. But some of that unspoken piece of it that you want to think about. So we've got our terms. When we create our search, we now have 3 terms, and we're going to combine them together in some way. Our primary operators are the or and the and. And so if I was going to combine these together with an operator, which one am I going to use? So if I have N2O, I have the word N2O, I have the word labor, I have the word pain. What operator do I want to use to combine these together to get all 3 of those in my set? And? You sure?
You said use or for synonyms, right?
Mm-hmm. I want you to be confident. So she wants us to use and she's correct. So we have 3 different concepts here that we want to and together because we want all 3 of them to come up. So if we start out with N2O, we start with nitrous oxide, we put that in, we're going to probably get a couple million search hits. If we add in, I only want nitrous oxide and how it affects labor, we're going to get fewer results because both of those have to be there. And then we add in that third and we're going to have even fewer because it also has to do with pain. As I look at this and I think, well, what other words do I want to include? And this is where we start to think about our synonyms, and I start to think, so if I'm looking for N2O, what's another word for N2O? So I could use nitrous oxide. Any other words you would use for N2O? And this is the part where it's really helpful that you all have some knowledge, because this is the part where I know nothing. And so we really will work through vocabulary. You may pull out a thesaurus if worse comes to worse, but this is really the place where that discussion you're having online really may help you, that somebody may use a term that you hadn't thought of. Our term labor, any ideas for what we might use for synonyms for labor? Other alternatives? And we are spitballing, so you can use anything, say everything you have.
Delivery.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, and then we've got pain, ideas you want to use for pain. This is where I feel like you guys are the masters of better words for pain. I have no idea. I'm putting up words, I don't know what they mean. I love doing classes with y'all. Are there words for pain in this context? Maybe not? Okay. And so we've got a list of terms, and looking at that list and thinking about our original question, are there any words on the list that we've come up with that you don't think we should use? And why? Birth. Why not birth?
Yeah, and that might lead to like results for the infant and not the mother.
Okay. Okay, so that's a really good thought. So thinking through what you might get with using that term. Other thoughts? Other words you're not sure about?
whole
Delivery is gonna.
Because like, if you're to the point where you're about to deliver, you're not in the stage of labor that you would be using nitrous oxide.
Okay.
That's true. But it can also be like the types of delivery.
Okay, so there's a stage at which you're using it, and delivery is at the end of that, and then you're.
I mean, I don't know if it would just bring up a broad general term of delivery, like delivering medicine, delivering mail, whatever.
That actually was what I was thinking. That was, for me, that was where I went with delivery was. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, so the delivery may be a little broader in terms of what you're going to get. I hadn't even thought about stages wise. So things to consider. I'm not going to say that we wouldn't use any of these, but things to consider as you go back and look at your list again. In the list under labor, what would be your 2 favorite things you might want to try? Labor and contractions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pregnancy, it might be like, it's pregnancy, and that's not
8 weeks, and that would be bad.
Go to the dentist. Can I have N2O? Well, it was funny when I read it. I'm like, what? That's where I think of N2O. I didn't know you used it when people were in labor. So some ideas to think about as you're creating that search and as you're identifying the terms that you're going to use. Because part of the process here is creating that search, working through and identifying the terms that you're going to use throughout the databases. In your pain list, thoughts on your pain list? Like, don't like, feel good about? Okay, you feel good about this list? Tell me what analgesic is. Define that for me. Because in my head, it's not what I think it's not what it is.
A method of pain control.
Usage for pain.
pharmacologic agent. So analgesia.
Analgesia would be pain, and analgesic would be pain reliever.
Okay, so you really want to. So I didn't put the right word. Okay. Because I was in my head, I thought it was a pain reliever. So, and this is a piece where analgesic is the word that I know, and so that's what I typed. But I do think you said analgesia, which is the pain itself, and so that's because in my head, I thought we've gone beyond what we want. Feeling comfortable with your list? Understand how we got there and some of the questions I've asked you to think about in terms of creating that. Okay, so we're going to take this now and we're going to go back to CINAHL. So we've come up with some thoughts on what we're going to search. We've gone back to CINAHL. I'm going to use the example that we've just gone through. As you're practicing, as we talk through this, feel free to use your search. So feel free to use your PICO question that you're considering and see how that plays out for you as we go through the databases to see what comes up. So for this, I'm going to start out with the N2O because I want you guys to see what happens. I'm going to start out with N2O. In pain. So I'm starting with the 3 basic concepts that we had, and you'll notice that I'm just putting them in. I'm not adding any other limiters. We're not doing anything else fancy. We're just going to put in those 3 things because I want to see what comes back with my search results. And what you'll find when you work with different librarians is we all search in different ways. We all have different ways we like to do things. I like to sort of start with what I'm thinking and see what I get and then finesse my search. Everyone does this in a different way. We only got 40 things back. Do you feel good about that? Do you feel like we're missing things? Thoughts on our search result numbers? Like, how does this think?
Broaden it up by just changing to an or rather than an and, which broaden it up, right?
Now you have to put or between
Or
like
could we
labor or contraction.
Or could we do N2O or nitrous oxide?
Okay.
Would add to the big element.
Okay, so comment in the front was we don't have many options. And this is really true. Do you feel like there should have been more results and that we're missing something? Okay, and that's really what I wanted you to think about is if I did this search and got 40, as a non-medical person, I'm not really sure, did I miss something or is this really all that's been written? You all, experts in your field, can look at this and say, there should be a lot more out there. we're definitely missing something. And that oring something in and thinking about where do you want to use the or is really important. So there's already been a couple suggestions. So I heard a suggestion that we add something here with N2O, that we give an option here. So here we can do the N2O or nitrous oxide. When I do the reminder, nitrous oxide is a phrase, and so I'm going to go ahead and put my quotation marks around this. Just a reminder that the quotations around two words make it search for a phrase, and I want it to look for nitrous oxide as a phrase. I don't want it to look for nitrous in one place and oxide someplace else. I want this to be a phrase. Sometimes that's not as important. Here, that feels very important to me. And then I'm going to go ahead and just do that as a way to broaden my search out, just make one change. I also am a little funny. I like to make one change at a time, sort of changing my control one at a time, because if I make too many changes to my variables, then I don't know which one worked and which one didn't. So this is the part that was interesting to me, because when I originally did the search, I did N2O, because that's what was there, and I was curious what was going to happen. When we added in nitrous oxide, we brought back 303. My guess is, and we're going to go look, my guess is the correct terminology to use here is nitrous oxide. And I think that makes sense to all of us. N2O is, I won't say slang, but it's kind of a slang for nitrous oxide. But you can see that one change made a huge difference in what we got. And so as we look at our search results now, we can see, yes ma'am?
So if you do that, and then, like, say you wanted labor on the next line, could you do labor or contractions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons I like to search using the multiple boxes, because I can visually see in the first box, everything in that box needs to be a synonym. And I can order together as many things in that box as I want, but I want all of my same kinds of terms, same aspects to be in that one box. And it's just, for me, it's really a visual thing, because if I started to put labor and then I put N2O in the same box, I apparently have my caps lock on, I guess. Then what it's going to do is it's going to look for labor or N2O. Either one of those can be relevant. It can be in the search, and now I've blown it up. Now I've completely blown up what I'm going to get. So for me, the boxes help remind me synonyms stay together in that box. They just nest within each other there. So I want to look just with this basic search that we've done by adding in the nitrous oxide. I want to look at the search results and talk through a little bit about finessing your search using what you found in your search results. And so this first article looks really good to me. I don't really know. Remember, I don't know anything about this. You all are going to take care of me. But I look at this nitrous oxide for the management of labor analgesia. Those are the words you guys used. Those are the things you came up with as we talked through it. And so as I look at this, you'll see there's some subject headings listed here. We have nitrous oxide, we have labor pain, and we have analgesia. These are all subject terms, so that's official vocabulary that the system is using to search. Those are all really, what that says to me are these are good words for me to put into my search. And so those are all words that y'all came up with. So pat yourselves on the back. You know what you're talking about. And this, to me, on my own, without talking to you, this word would never have come into my vocabulary. I would never have thought to use that, and it's why that conversation is super helpful, and it's why your prior knowledge really helps develop that search for you. So we now know there are some subjects that we can use to search. And I'm going to just scroll through a little bit, because the other thing that's coming up here that I think is interesting is that unspoken thing that we had, female, is showing up as a subject heading, and I think this is kind of interesting, because I really wasn't expecting that to show up, and I didn't even notice it when I looked through my searches before. But you can, as we go through, you see the labor pain, the nitrous oxide are all showing up here. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top, because one of the things that I did when I started was I specifically didn't limit to a search field. And by not limiting it to a search field, what the system does is it looks for those words anywhere in the record. So the words could show up in the very last sentence of the very last paragraph. And if nitrous oxide is only in the very last sentence of the very last paragraph, how relevant is it to what you're looking for? So those are the kind of articles that you really don't need to look at. You really want to eliminate those. And that's why the fields become a lot more important to you as you search. So not selecting fields helps you begin your search. It helps when you begin to construct your search because you can start to look and see what the vocabulary is. Then for me, as I look at my search results, I can see what are some of the subject headings that are going to be used, and I would then go use those to refine my search a little bit. And so I would actually, we know that nitrous oxide is a subject, and I would come in here, select a field, and I would select the subject. And now it's going to look for nitrous oxide as a subject of my article. I also know that labor is showing up in the subject field. I could add those as a subject. Because I'll say one of the things I was concerned about when I put in labor was other contexts in which the word labor is used where you actually would have pain. And so I was a little concerned about that, and seeing that labor pain is a subject heading makes me think we're going to be okay if we use it as a subject. And then the other piece that I'm interested in doing here is adding in some other terms that we had seen. So the analgesia is showing up as a subject, and so I really want to put that in because I think that's going to expand our search a little bit and get us some other options. And we can choose to add that as a subject as well. We have 303, which isn't a ton. I mean, it's more than I would want to go through. But when we really refine our search and say, I want this to be the subject of my article, I want the main content of my article, not just a reference somewhere, but I want it to be the main content, we're down to 58 articles. That's a decent search. That's really not a bad search for what you're working on. Does the use of the subject and identifying subject, does that make sense to you all? Has anybody been doing that? Okay. That's really going to help, and it's one of the places, again, this is one of the things that working with a librarian, this is the kind of thing we can help with. So as you're doing your searches, if this is a place where you struggle, make a research consultation with us because we can help with that. Because that's going to really focus, and for working through your PICO and developing these strategies, this is going to be the place where you're going to really want to focus in on that. Does this help with what your questions were? Okay. So we've done that advanced search, that combining things together, looking at subjects. I want to go back, and within CINAHL there is an option for advanced search, and I'm going to click on that. Keeps our search at the top, but what I want to show you and remind you about is what it does is it brings up a bunch of limiters for you. How many of you have been using the limiters? A couple of you. A little bit, sometimes maybe. Got a couple people in the back with some kind of grins on their faces. How many of you have been using them and not sure you're using them appropriately? I kind of feel like that's the look in the very back of the room that I'm getting. Okay. So the limiters, there are a lot of them. And every time you add a limiter, just like every time you add another and, you narrow your search down. Every time you add one of these limiters to refine your search, you're narrowing it down. You can limit yourself to nothing. So every limiter just squeezes that down into a funnel. So a couple things that show up here as you start, you can limit to full text. Please don't limit to full text. I know you want to have immediate gratification, but you may miss the very best articles. And if we don't have the article in full text, what are you going to do? You're going to Interlibrary Loan. It's going to be here within a week. It's fine. You're okay with it. So this is the point. You guys aren't allowed to do full text only anymore. You're just not allowed to do that. You're too old for that. You're only allowed to do that when you're an undergrad and like your first and second year. That's my rule. There is the peer-reviewed option. How many of you are using the peer-reviewed option? Some of you. Okay. And I can't remember what the requirements are for this assignment, But you may want to limit to the peer review. There's also sometimes a limiter for scholarly. That will definitely focus things down. I think a lot of what you're going to find anyway is going to be peer reviewed, but you may want to use the peer reviewed option. But you want to also make sure that you make note that that's a thing that you limited. That's a limiter that you use, and you want to be consistent about that. You can limit by language. That may be important. If you only read English, that really may actually be an important limiter. If you're finding things that aren't in English, you may not find much of that. Couple other things that I'm going to show. At some point you may be looking for randomized control trials. There's a limiter here that allows you to search just for randomized control trials. If you're looking for things with a specific geographic subset, so if you're looking specifically for something happening in a specific region, you may want to use this. It's going to eliminate a lot, so be careful how you use it. So I'm going to talk about a lot of limiters. I am not necessarily saying, oh, use all of them. Using all of them may really dump some stuff out that you want. The sex, the male-female piece of this, depending on your population, so depending on what you're looking for, I tend to add the sex limiter after I've looked at my search results. So this is kind of like that human-animal thing. So if I did my search and I found that I was getting lots of pregnant monkeys, I would go back and add human. If I looked at my search results and I was getting lots of pregnant men, I would go back and limit my search results. So this is one that I would add at a later date. The age group ones, are any of you looking at a specific age population for your question? Okay, okay. If you end up with a specific age population, most of the databases have options where you can do some limiting by age, and so that can also be helpful. I don't know anybody who's ever used the number of pages limit. It's here, but I don't know that you've used it. If you're looking for some kind of image, there is limiters for images. I have used that because someone's specifically looking for an image, but for this assignment, can't imagine. Then over on this side, this is where I think we're going to come into some places where you're going to find some really useful information. The publication type. So if you are looking for specific types of publications, this list can be really, really helpful for you. So if you're looking perhaps for meta-synthesis, meta-analysis, maybe you're looking for nursing diagnoses, you're looking specifically for, again, you've got randomized control trial here as well. So systematic reviews, you're looking to see what's out there. Publication type limiters are really helpful. You're also going to see the publication type limiters in PubMed. So they're going to show up in multiple places, and they are the ones I think you're going to be interested in. There is a limiter here for pregnancy. So for this search, you might want to try that. It would be something I would add if I felt like I wasn't getting what I wanted. I wouldn't add it at the beginning. Then there's also these special interests, and I have found for this group that the special interests may be useful to you. So if you're specifically looking for pain and pain management, then you may want to use that special interest focus to narrow things down if things are not coming up. This is one you might want to play with and see how it works for you. But I wanted to point out those advanced search features and those limiters that you can use, because those don't have to be entered in as search terms. Those can just be chosen, and then it searches those for you. Does that make sense? The other thing I want to show you, so I clicked on advanced search to get to that button. Right next to that is the search history. Are y'all using your search history buttons yet? Okay, so some of you are, a couple of you aren't. Search history is definitely something to look for. How do I get to that information? And search history, as you go through your process, as you start to work through different assignments, you're going to need to document what did you search and what kind of results did you get. And the search history does that. You can print your search history, you can take screenshots of it, whatever works for you, but you can see as we look at our search history, so we started out with a search and we had 40, and then we changed some of our terms, and you can see the history of what we've done. So this is the search where we had just the terms. The SU is the search where we limited to those terms as a subject field. And then within your search history, if you wanted to rerun a search, this is also really helpful. So how many of you have done a search and you've done another search, and you've done about 3 more searches, and then you think, oh, I really want to go back to that second search because that second search was super perfect, and then you couldn't do it again. This helps you get back to that super perfect search. And so I use it a lot for that, where I've played around with terms and I've played around, and then I can't remember what were the right words that I used. This helps me get back to that. And so like if I liked my second search set, I can actually go back and view my results right from here. You also have limiters on the left-hand side here. So we, again, similar to what we see when we do the advanced search, you can limit to full text, peer-reviewed, abstract from here. You can limit by time period. Are y'all, I can't remember, is there a requirement to limit by date here? Okay. 5 years?
No, not for this project.
No, okay. Okay, sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's not. So depending on, you want to check on that. That's one of those things to check. And you can limit by date. You can limit by specific types of sources. You could limit by major subject headings. And this is a nice way to go sometimes if you're not sure, you got a huge set and you're not 100% sure how you want to narrow it down. This major subject headings allows you to see some of the other terminology. And always make sure you notice there's the show more. And that's going to pop open another window that lets us see a lot of different terms. And here you can, one of the nice things here is it gives me some other vocabulary ideas. So if you were having a hard time either identifying how to narrow it down or come up with other vocabulary terms, this is a good way to say, what are some other words that I might be using? And you guys did good on your word choice. But we could then go through and say, I want to use specific kinds of things. And then as you continue down, you can limit to specific publication, publisher. You've got all your language, age, geography. All those limiters also show up on this search screen as well. Questions? So just a refresher in terms of looking at our search results. So as we look at the search results here, this first article, which looks to me like it might be perfect, is coming from the AANA Journal. And I can look at the search. I can see what were the subject headings. I can see some of the minor subjects, read my abstract to determine is it appropriate. Abstract's going to be really helpful to save you time. And before you pull up a full article, is it going to be helpful to me? This is an article that you were interested in. A couple different things you can do. Remember, you've got all the tools on the right-hand side. The tool that allows you to send it into your Refworks is the export. So I'm going to export from here. I'm going to export directly into Refworks. I'm going to save it. We're using the blue Refworks. And it has saved into my last imported folder. And there's my article. And remember that I can click on the article itself. I now have the link to the full text finder. One of the things, we'll not look at it now, but you can actually drop in the full article. You can save the articles into Refworks if you want to do that. If you want to look at the full text of the article, the link is over here for the PDF full text. That's typically what everybody wants. You want the full text. Make sure if you want that you're downloading what you need. And you can scroll through and see the whole article. Again, your tools stay over here on the right-hand side. So if you want to read it before you save it to Refworks, you can do that. One of the things that's important, so you find this article and you want to send this article to your partner who you're working on this assignment with. How many of you are going to cut and paste the URL off the top of the screen? Nobody, because you learned better last time. What are you going to do?
Download it.
You're going to download it and send it. Okay, I like that. You got to work around. Share your Refworks file. Ooh, you're smart. You're fancy. Anybody else have ideas what you're going to do? So we're not going to use this link because this link isn't going to work for us. There is a link over on this side that's referred to as a permalink. And it opens up a new little window, and that link will work for you. So if there's a permalink option, that's the link you want to sell. You could also, one of the other options is you can email. So if you could email this to your partner. I frequently will email something to myself and then send it on because it's got the correct link in, and I can always double check before I send it on. Love the idea of sharing your Refworks folder. you guys make me proud. And then the other, the downloading it and sending it is also an option. So those will all work. Just that link at the top isn't going to work for you. So if we looked at the second article, and I really like this second article, so all of you who have all been told that you're not allowed to skip this because it doesn't have full text right here, what are you going to do with this one? I'm going to go ahead and open it. Have you guys, some of you I know have experienced this with all this other stuff. So there's a link over here that says Full Text Finder, and this is the link you want to follow. And in a perfect world, it does this. The full text will take you to another source where you can get the article. So we've got the article. We can now download and select it. I'm going to go ahead and open it within this database. So this opened within Science Direct, because there's a couple things happening here that I want to point out. So we opened this article in a completely different database. It's now open in Science Direct. That's how we get this article. You can read the article. You can download it. You have the same options. Let me close this little guy up here. You can export it out into your Refworks account from here. You can download your PDF. But what I want to point out to you is there's a whole lot of extra information over here. And this is sort of that expand your search, head down a rabbit trail. But if you liked this article, they're making some recommendations for other articles that might be of interest. So these may be other places where you find references. You'll also see that there are 4 articles, citing articles, so 4 articles that cited this. So they're giving you some, again, other references here. And then a little bit of information about how many people have used it and such. So, but you can, and then you've got the full article here. And I'm going to scroll to the bottom. So when you get down to the reference list, one of the things you'll see in a couple of different databases is you get to the list of references. And if you think about the idea that if this article is perfect, they may cite articles that are equally as relevant. So you may want to look at their references. One of the things that some of the databases do is in the list of references, they actually have some linking out. So they may actually do some of that for you. Does that make sense? Science Direct is one of those. I love it when a search result comes up in here because it does offer some other suggestions, things you might not have gotten. The other thing that will happen, so if you use Full Text Finder and it doesn't make a match, there will be a link, and there's no way to guarantee that it's not going to make a match. Yeah, I'm not going to find one that won't. But if you come up with the list where it's got the screen and it'll have a list of, we couldn't find a match, but here are your other options. One of those options is the Interlibrary Loan form. And so if you click on the Interlibrary Loan form, it's going to auto-populate the Interlibrary Loan request, and then you can just submit your request from there. But we have a pretty strong collection, so I think for the majority of things, we're actually probably going to have them. But if you can't find it, I want you to use the Interlibrary Loan. I really want you to use the Interlibrary Loan. Okay, so we've talked, any questions about CINAHL? We've talked a lot about CINAHL, creating that search. Okay, I'm going to check on time. So if I do PubMed? Okay. So I'm going to switch back to the database list. I'm going to go ahead and close out Refworks and go back to the database list and do a little bit of searching in PubMed. And I guess real quick, I'll go back to this list and point out something. So we've got PubMed and we've got Medline, both on this list. How many of you searched both of them for the same topics? Is anybody searching Medline at all? Okay. Okay, so PubMed is a subset of Medline. I have a preference for PubMed. I know for this assignment you're going to use PubMed. And I guess what I want to say about this is that for your 4th database, you could use Medline, but you've already searched PubMed, which is a subset. So I would encourage you to use something besides Medline as your 4th, but I don't want to eliminate it. Oh, now I've got it 2 open. So when you get into PubMed, immediately dumps you into our basic search screen. I like to immediately switch into advanced. Just going to start out with the advanced search, and because it allows me to do that building a search, and I'm just a fan of the help me keep my stuff in order. And so we've already done a search within CINAHL, and we've gotten some ideas about what terminology is working. And so whichever way you start, I encourage you to take what you learned in the first database and apply it into whatever the second database is that you're searching. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just start with nitrous oxide. It doesn't like it. As my first term. And then we used labor. And you see that it's just building for me. It's just, the other one had 3 boxes. This is just building for me. And then I'm going to do my new word that I learned today. So I'm just going to use the same search that I did in the previous search. PubMed and CINAHL, while there is overlap in content, it's not a complete overlap. So you are going to see some different kinds of articles coming up. And PubMed uses, so we'll go ahead and do that search and see what we get. PubMed searches a little differently. You can see the screen is very, very different when we get our search results back. And so as we look at these, the things that show up in the top matches are title matches for our search. So we searched the full text. And this is that world of, it could be in the last sentence of the last paragraph. This is 3 citations that were found by making title matches. It's a, can't think what they call it, the best match kind of thing. And so they're taking your words and sticking them in the title, thinking that's going to be more relevant than anywhere that it comes up. So you may want to start with looking at those. But then it also just brings back the 273 things that matched for us. And so we could look at those as well. That's a choice you're going to make. I'm going to let you make those choices. As you look at your results, you'll see we've got some things as we go through, and I'm just going to glance through. Well, golly jeeper, look at number 4. Implementation of an evidence-based practice change to offer nitrous oxide during labor. That sounds like what we're looking for. So let's look at number 4. And see what kind of terminology we're coming up with. And so as I look at this, I get the citation information from article, I get the abstract, I get some information. There are some keywords here, so we know what kind of keywords, and you can see our words are showing up. Then we have our publication type, mesh terms, and substances. This is something they talk about, you look on things that talk about exploding, so we're going to use the plus. It's going to bring us back our full list. And it gives us a chance of look to see what kind of publication is it? And there is a limiter here for publication type, and we're going to walk through how to do that. But you can also see your mesh terms, and these are the medical subject headings. And so just, how many, you guys have all used a thesaurus in your lifetime? Mm-hmm. Mesh is a thesaurus just for this database, created just for that. And so it tells us what are the terms that we want to use. So what is the appropriate mesh term that we want to use? And as I look at this, we've got a number of things that we could try. And so I'm seeing that therapeutic use, nitrous oxide therapeutic use is a mesh term. We could look through and determine which of these others would be appropriate for our search as we go through. And so this is a way for you to look and determine what are some of the mesh terms that you want to use. There's also a mesh, you can search for mesh terms as well, and I'm going to show you that in a second, depending on time. And so again, here we found our search. We've got the full text links up here. It's going to link out to Elsevier, or we've got our full text finder to pull up the full text. If I want to save this, how many of you have been using PubMed and being frustrated for saving it into Refworks? Okay. We have a very honest person in the back of the room. It's got an option here, send it to Refworks, send it to your citation manager. Have you been doing this and it makes your head hurt? it creates a file, then you have to load that file. It's doable. It's very doable. I don't do that because I'm really lazy. So remember when we looked at Refworks and I showed you the Save to Refworks tool? I have the Save to Refworks tool in my bookmarks. So if I wanted to save this, if I click on Save to Refworks, it opens a little Refworks window on the side, pulls all the information, and it's now going to save it to Refworks. That little installing that Save to Refworks is just going to make life so much easier for you. If you weren't using PubMed, it might not make a difference. Because you're going to use PubMed, I would definitely encourage you to try it. Again, if you have problems, I know I've worked with a couple students who have Macs and it's been a problem. There's a workaround and it's super easy. And if I, who don't use a Mac, could figure it out, you guys who use your Macs can do that. So it's now saved it into my Refworks. I'm going to close the sidebar, but you can see how simple that Save to Refworks option is. So I'd encourage you to use that. You'll see that there are some similar articles referenced here. So again, another rabbit trail you can follow to find things. And I'm going to go back to my search results. Maybe. So I'm going to go back to my search results because I've got some ideas now of some of the terms I might want to use. Point out a couple things on the side here. We've got some other titles. So typically on the right side, you're seeing other similar activity, things you might want to look at. And then on the left side, you're seeing the ways we can refine. So I could refine the article type. How many of you have used the limiters here within PubMed? Any of you tried to use them and been frustrated? It's not intuitive. So with the article type, you see 2 article types listed, and you see the option to customize. If you wanted to look for specific types of articles, you have to go through and identify what types of articles you want. So I'm going to go through and say we want a meta-analysis. Let's get some randomized controls. We've got some reviews. Systematic reviews. I'm going to add those, and then it adds them to the list at the top, but you'll notice that my numbers I still have 273 results. It's a 2-step process, so you add them to your article types, and then you tell the system, I want to limit to systematic reviews, I want to limit to regular reviews, I want to limit to randomized controls. And so I add them to my list, and then I choose them, and now you can see we're down to 77. So we've added that, we've refined it a little more, and we've narrowed down our search results. Not necessarily sure this is the list I'd use, but this is what you would want to do. You have the ability to limit to full text, but none of you are going to do that anymore. You have the publication date limiter, and again, you can customize that if you want. You've got your species, so if we wanted to limit to humans, because we had all kinds of pregnant monkeys, we could do that. And then there are some additional filters you could add as well. I'm going to clear all my filters out, though, just to get our results back. Does the filtering make sense on here? It's a little different to have to select it and then select it again. And this is, again, a place where you might be doing your search, and this is a time when you call the librarian to ask for a little more help, because that's where you're getting stuck. I'm going to go back up into my advanced search, and when I go back to my advanced search, you can see my history is here. So again, as you're tracking what you're searching, your history is going to show up. You can download it, take a screenshot of it, print it, whatever, but make sure you're keeping track of that. And I can go back and we saw that nitrous oxide was a subject heading. And so if I do my search again, and this is one of the things within PubMed, because of the way it allows you to combine fields together, I can search nitrous oxide as a mesh subheading. Or I'm going to search it as a mesh term. And I'm going to just search for nitrous oxide as a mesh term. And I get 13,000 references. If I go back to my search again, I could then search for labor. And I think labor was a mesh term. And you'll notice I searched for them separately, and I came up with 2 big sets of results. I can now add them to my builder and combine them together. By searching them separately, it allows me to and I do this sometimes in PubMed because of the way it allows you to build, is it allows me to try my different terms and are they bringing back what I want, and then combining the right words together. So it's kind of a different way to search, and does it make sense? Some of you have some little question marks on your faces. Does it make sense, that thought? Because I did this big search together right here with all my whole set, but now if I want to adjust things, I have to redo the whole piece. So if I figure out right word, maybe right word, let's combine those together. And so I now I've done those two. I do my search for the two of them, and I've got 125. I left out we don't have pain. We've left out the pain concept, which is kind of important here. But it would allow me, I could now go back and like, okay, this is good. I can go back and add in and search it. And I want to add that and that. And I'm back to that 58 we had. So it just allows you to pull things together in different ways. Any questions about that? Okay. Anything else I missed with PubMed? Okay. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to have a transition here. We're going to take a short break, give you guys time for a break, and I'm going to stop, and we'll be back in a minute, and Lauren will be on.
So we are going to go ahead and get started again, so we can get you out of here, because we have, because as I said, I know we've got at least Cochrane to talk about. So we're going to do Cochrane first, because that's the third of the 4 required database, or no, the third of the 3 requireds, and then you have 1 other optional. I'm going to definitely show you 2, so I'm going to show you Joanna Briggs, because that one is a little different, and I am going to also show Up to Date, and I have, and as I mentioned, I do have some stuff about that, so I can get in, and I have a guide that will help you hopefully get in yourself, but I did communicate with one of our other librarians who is not here today, so she can't come. She's our e-resources librarian, but she tried it from off campus and is running into the same issue. So she's going to send an email, or she's going to send an email. If it doesn't, if the directions that we have on the live guide don't work for you guys, then we will get, then as Stephanie mentioned, she'll get it into your course and she'll be back to you about how to get to that. So, but not everyone's going to necessarily need that one, at least for this project. So, so we are going to start with Cochrane. So, but before I get started, are there any questions that came up about PubMed, or while you were thinking about it in the break, or any of that kind of stuff? We still feeling good? Okay, good. So I'm just going to open another, or actually I'm going to close out of that one. And I'm just going to go back to that databases for nursing. And so we are going to go to Cochrane, which is on that list of recommended databases. So Cochrane is a little different in what you're going to be doing. And in the realm of, CINAHL and PubMed, we're all getting us results. One of the frustrating things about Cochrane is sometimes you go in here and you've got you've got this whole head of steam. I've got all these wonderful search terms that have been working really well, and I've gotten good results, and sometimes I'm not getting as many as I might want, or I'm getting too many. The thing with Cochrane is sometimes you'll put in your search terms and you get nothing. And it's very frustrating because it's because of what Cochrane is. And so Cochrane Library is a database of systematic reviews. That is the hope for it. They are the group that comes up with Cochrane reviews. So they have a very specific way of creating systematic reviews that really helps ensure getting high quality information and eliminating any kind of bias. And that's the idea, and that's what Cochrane is great for. There are other additional things that they add in as material types, but the idea of going to Cochrane is really so you can get those systematic reviews from them. So if they do not have a systematic review on your specific topic, you might have to play around with your search terms and get some different resources. So I just wanted to mention that. We are going to still stick with, I think for the interest of time, I think it's probably easiest for us to stick with the same ones that we've been doing this whole time, and doing the pain management during labor and using nitrous oxide for that. So we can still, when we're in Cochrane. We are here. There are different types of materials in there. You'll see it when we get to our search results. But to get to search results, you see that the search it's up there up at the top, and you do have just a general. You can do title, abstract, keyword, or you can browse if you aren't really sure what you're doing. But most of you have your P code, so you don't really need to browse. There is also an advanced search, so we can click on advanced search, and it does have you can search with mesh terms. And I feel like this is really loud. I don't know why, but I'm gonna turn it down a tiny bit. And if that bothered anybody, let me know. But you have the options to just do a search. You have a search manager and medical terms, so you can use mesh terms. I'm just gonna try with the basically kind of how we were doing it before. So we're gonna do nitrous oxide. There we go. So I'm doing that in quotes still, and then I'm going to add, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to add in labor. And I know we were actually getting a lot with labor pain as one. We'll try this. If we do need to separate them as different terms, we can. Right now we're not doing it as an actual like labor pain as a quote, so I think it should just work as an and. And so I am going to run my search. And it'll take a second, and I'm excited to see that we actually do have Cochrane reviews. So all of my prefacing of may not get anything. Sorry, I did not actually dress appropriately for today. I forgot that I was going to be mic'd up, so I don't have a pocket and I don't have any kind of thing. So hopefully this will work. So we do actually have some. So all of my warnings, if you're not going to get anything, isn't true for this case. But again, when it comes to your PICO and the one you're doing, you may not get anything. And in that case, or you might actually, the more frustrating thing is you might get to a set of results and you'll say, oh, I've got a ton of stuff. But you don't really realize until you're starting to look at it that they are these trials. So let's look at the Cochrane reviews, and then we'll look at the other types of tabs of materials and while we're going. So the very first one here, so this inhaled analgesia for pain management and labor seems like it would be good. This one is a overview of systematic review. So this one is an overarching concept of all sorts of different pain management for women in labor. We also, I don't see anything specific for nitrous oxide in the title, but I'm thinking hopefully that this is going to be a group of, a group of not just nitrous oxides, but others as well. So if we can look at the preview, we can see a little snippet of the abstract, so a little bit of the snippet of the summary. If it looks like that's going to be what we want, we click on it, and it does take us to the full systematic review. So when we're looking at this, we can see we have our abstract is what we're looking at in the very beginning, and then we scroll down and see the whole thing. So you can read the entire thing as one. If you want to view it as a PDF, that's an option for you. So you do have this option to view the PDF, and you can download it as and download it there if that's your preference. So this is our great systematic review, which is wonderful. So we did get something. Happy to get to that. If we want to email it to ourselves, we can do that. I also just realized that I completely forgot to remember whether or not how we can put this into. We have the option to put it into Mendeley, but I don't think we can immediately get it into Refworks. I completely forgot about that part. I'm sorry about that. But we will. What we might want to do is just see if the Save to Refworks toolbar works. Curious. Okay, so it did come from, it acts as though it's a journal article from the Cochrane database of systematic reviews. So this at least gets you a good head start for getting some of that stuff. And we might actually, if I continue to look through, I might find a Save to Refworks button. But right now, it looks like it's only bringing us some of the information that we might need for this. I don't even think it brought in the DOI. If I click Save to Refworks, we can always add it and edit that too. It's still saying it's uploading, but we do have a DOI right up here, so we could just add that in once we got to that section within Refworks, and then we can add that one in. Still saying it's uploading. There it is. Okay, view in Refworks. So I am still using Stephanie's account. I think that's probably easiest just for this, sake of the transition and all of that kind of thing. So we do have, it's still saying it's extracting, but I'm going to go back. I can keep that one open. If I go back to my advanced search, or I go back to my advanced search, you can see that there are options in terms of seeing what, customizing the time range. So at least all of these, or there's at least 2 within the last year, 2 within the last 2 years. You could go back to the listings and see when they were published and see if they need to be updated. In addition, as I mentioned, there are other types of materials that are linked here within Cochrane. You're welcome to use those materials if you want to. It's just that's not the express purpose for going to Cochrane. But in this case, for our particular search, we don't have any protocols, but we do have some trials. So usually these trials are coming from, they have a central register of controlled trials, and most of these are going to be RCTs, so they're telling you about this. Most of these will tell you that something is happening, so you can, but we don't necessarily have the full text of this available through Cochrane. So there are ways you can link out, and you can link out using Full Text Finder. So if I was interested in any of these, so this one is apparently, I don't know how to say pethidine, I'm going to guess, but that's another type of pain management, I'm assuming. So if I wanted to look at this is a trial that was going on that we might want to look at, we might want to be able to see what the results are and use these. So to get to that, you can click on the title. It just gives you the information, so it tells you it gives you that summary of the result of where it was. It tells you when it was added and a little bit about it. You can see the source, so they do link to clinicaltrials.gov. So you could go to, they do tell you where you could go to from there. And then they do have your mesh headings, so they do have nitrous oxide and labor pain as a mesh heading as mesh headings for this particular search. And then if you want to get to it, you have the option to, this one just says, oh my goodness. I've got my links here to get to it on clinicaltrials.gov. So you can get to those things, but again, those aren't necessarily showing us the full text. So I just wanted to mention that if you are getting to some of those other tabs, they're just kind of giving you those things as, it's a great place to find those resources, but it's not necessarily going to get you the full text like we do have for all of the Cochrane database. This is for all of the systematic reviews. So are there any questions about this one? I know that I feel like I ended up opening more questions than I answered in terms of this one, but are there any concerns or questions about how you can get to resources? So the search is up at the top. You do still have your same options for advanced search, and you can use the mesh headings if they're working well for you. It's nice that you don't have yet a third kind of system of terms you can use. They use the same ones. And if you do have any problems finding them, just try and think of other words. If you're not getting good results, then sometimes you have to kind of broaden it out a little bit. So even though we didn't see nitrous oxide specifically in that title, it's somewhere in there as part of the group that it was showing up in. So in some of these. So it might be not necessarily focusing specifically on your PICO. It might be a little bit broader than your PICO when you're looking at Cochrane. Okay. All right, well, good. So it looks like we're good on that one. So let's start talking about, as I mentioned, we're going to go to Joanna Briggs next. So Joanna Briggs is a database that has, it's another one that's, again, it's a little bit strange. It's not necessarily a whole system of journal articles. These are things that are coming from, just like with Cochrane, the strength in Joanna Briggs is that there is a foundation, there's an institute behind this where there is a group of researchers who are coming up with information and that they are publishing their own content. So that's kind of what Cochrane was doing. They're publishing their own content. They have systematic reviews. Joanna Briggs has different types of resources. They do have, again, categories of types of information. So in this case, they have evidence summaries. They have some systematic reviews that they come up with as well. They also have, I think, care sheets, so evidence-based care sheets. So, and then they might have some things that you might end up, handing out to a patient. It would be written for a patient, telling them about it. So Joanna Briggs is again, it's another one of those kind of unique sources, which is what Stephanie left me with today. But she knew that, and that was okay. So on this one, I wish they would update their interface a little bit better, but this is what we have. So we do have, so when you click on Joanna Briggs, I skipped over it, but I wanted to mention, we do have multiple things through Joanna Briggs. So we are going to the Joanna Briggs EBP, their evidence-based practice database. It's the one in the yellow box. But if you were to scroll down to the J's on that nursing databases by subject list, you will see the JBI Journal Club and JBI Rapid. Those are both created by Joanna Briggs. They're kind of partner pieces to it. For those, you do have to have accounts. They're kind of where, and I've always kind of been curious if anyone is using this one, but you can maintain your own journal club, and you can have people kind of join this and kind of going through the evidence. So those are some other different pieces of it. But again, we are going to the main one that's up here in the top. So I've already clicked on it, and it's up here on that one. So I've got, so I'm here. This is the basic search. If we want to go to the advanced search, we have that option again. The advanced search does allow us to add more, I'm pretty sure. Although it looks, and we do have some different limits that we can use within the advanced search. So if we wanted to do, I'm not seeing an option to add more phrases, more lines on this one. But if we keep.
What's the multi-field search?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. There you go. So if I type in my nitrous oxide, in quotes again, and I can change this to use it as a mesh subject heading. So they do use mesh again. Cochrane, so it's nice when you do know that mesh subject heading, you can use that. And actually, I keep putting it in quotes. If you're using the mesh subject heading, you don't actually need to use quotes with that because you're using that official subject heading. I keep forgetting that, but it doesn't hurt anything to have them there. And then we can do pain and labor as separate since they are multiple fields here. And I do not remember if those were mesh field, if those were actual subject headings. I can't remember. We could go ahead and just, we could go ahead and search, and then we can come back and change it if we want to. So I'm going to go ahead and search. And then it shows up down at the bottom. So I do have, how many? There's only 5 results, so I do not have very many, and these are not exactly what I was thinking of. So I think that we do want to, we might want to try and require labor to be something more specific, because my first one that I'm getting looks like it's looking at labor more as like your work, because it's saying nitrous oxide occupational hazards. Not sure why that one's first, but it is one of those evidence summaries. This is a good way to see that there are different types of materials in this particular database. So there's the first 2 have the same name. So they're both nitrous oxide occupational hazards. But then one of them is an evidence summary and one of them is a recommended practice. So you can see that there are different types of materials when you look at this. So if you wanted to read it, you can click on the title. I think that gives you a little bit more information about the particular resource. But whenever you're looking for it, you want to do this JBI database PDF. So that's how you're going to get to it. It doesn't automatically show up even when you click on the title, the full text of it. So you can click on the JBI database PDF, and it takes me to my evidence summary. I'm fairly certain the evidence summary is, it does just try and give you, it is kind of high level. It just tells you that we've done a systematic review, or we've compiled a lot of evidence, and now we're just telling you this is like the highlights of what you should use. You can go to our resources if you need to, but it's going to be fairly short. So the summaries are fairly short. And they're really trying to get you the best answer quickly and be confident that this was up to date as of November 2017. So, so you can look through this. You can see it has a clinical bottom line on this one. And then I've got the characteristics of the evidence, and then here are your recommendations as to what you should do with somebody who's using this. But again, it's not really our topic. If we go back, though, I did want to show the difference between the others, with the other type that was available for this particular search. So, oh no, okay. Sorry, I waited too long. And then here is the recommended practices, so we can see what's the difference between the evidence summary and the recommended practice for the exact same search. So this one is slightly longer. This one looks like I've got, that's interesting. Okay, so it does include that summary as well. So this one is actually longer. So it looks like it includes the summary as part of it, but then the beginning part does tell me a little bit about special precautions and how would you actually treat somebody with this. So you can see that there's different types of materials. If I were to go back, and you can email this to yourself, you can print it, you can download it, you have those options here. You can email a jumpstart to this page. And if I go back, the only one that looked like it might have something to do with our topic is, or no, there's two. The two at the bottom are about pain management. So those might actually have something to do with it. I don't know where labor is. If we go back to or actually it looks like it didn't keep it. It doesn't show it to me, but it still kept those. And what if I do labor as a mesh subject heading? So see if this is if it is a mesh term, which I think it was. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. And requiring that being a subject heading, let's actually I'm going to try this a little different. I'm going to do just labor as a subject heading. Make sure that it was actually a mesh term. So it does look like it is a mesh term, but they do not have nearly as many resources. So it's again, this one, when I just do labor as a mesh term though, there is a evidence summary specifically for patient and controlled pain. So maybe nitrous oxide may not show up as one of those options though. So that might be why this didn't come up in our first result set. So we could actually, we could look at it. We could always just read it. Or we could look at, we could keep labor and then maybe just add in nitrous oxide, but not as a mesh term, and see if it, now I've forgotten how to spell it. Nitrous. Thank you. I'm like, oh, that didn't look right. And just do it as an all-field search and see if anything, see, so nothing came up. So I'm thinking in that one resource that talked about pain management, again, you're just kind of limited is whether or not it's available in this search. So this is what I was trying to warn you about on Cochrane. Turns out it didn't show up there, but it did show up in here. So that's why it's kind of nice that you're not required to use some of these smaller databases that may not have as much content. It's nice that you can kind of pick and you can choose as to see because if this one doesn't work for your particular topic, this one might work for yours, it might not work for others. And so that's why it's good to be aware of other resources that you can choose to use as that fourth kind of flex database. So I'm happy that we did have some resources in the beginning, even if they're not exactly what we were looking for. So with that, I don't know that it really is going to show up with this particular topic. We could look at the other one though if we had to. We could look at the pain management there without the nitrous oxide. So this one, and we could look at the evidence summary and look at the PDF for it and read through the clinical bottom line and see what are their recommendations for pain management. If nitrous oxide doesn't show up there, maybe there was the other alternative or other pieces of the intervention that you might want to bring in. So how are we feeling with this one? No? Good, but not liking it? Okay. The interface leaves a lot to be desired, so it is a little frustrating that it doesn't have as many controls and it doesn't have as much content. But if it does have your content, it's really high quality material. So don't want to discount it, don't want to completely throw it away, but it may not be useful for your particular topic. So another one is that if you are having that issue, or I know that Stephanie mentioned before that she really likes Web of Science. Web of Science is a good database. It's really good if you are wanting to find citing articles. That's kind of what it does. That's the reason why that was one of the big things about Web of Science is, and for citing articles, if you're not familiar with that terminology, it basically means that you find a resource and you want to know who has used that, who has since cited it in their research. So, and in their journals. And so it's awesome for doing that kind of genealogy of an article and finding out, here is my article, and now I can find who used it in the past, or what did they use to get to it. So what did they use to cite? And then it also does a great job of going into the future and identifying the resources that have since used it in the future. So that's, Web of Science is awesome for that, like kind of, and again, it's that concept of that genealogy of a journal article, and you will find resources for your topics in Web of Science. As Stephanie mentioned, you can find PsycInfo if your topic has something to do with psychology, or if there's a little bit of crossover there, then you might find PsycInfo really useful. It's going to search a lot like the first few databases, because all of these ones that that Web of Science and also PsycInfo, they are going to be, you're changing your what you're looking at. You're not just looking at these kind of unique sources like Cochrane and Joanna Briggs. You're looking at just a place to find articles. So a place to find scholarly journal articles, and it's just a different universe of journal articles. But that's so it's kind of more like the PubMed and CINAHL in those respects. So those are some of your options for doing those. Does anybody? I'm happy to show those, but it's really up to you if you want me to do that, and then I'll do up to date. Mm-hmm.
When you went to find databases, how did
Yes.
you get the nursing?
Yes, no problem. I'd be happy to do that. So when you go to, and I'm just going to go back to the library's homepage to get to it. So find databases, and then you go to nursing by clicking the subjects. So that is really important, because otherwise you're not going to get to this subset of list. And you do have the option to go to the live guide for nursing, and there is a list of databases here. And you will find, I'm pretty sure most of the ones that we're talking about, but something like PsycInfo that particular one isn't on this list right now. And I don't see up to date on this list at the moment. So it may not be a complete mirroring. So this one is the listing from the live guide, but I think that it is a good idea to be using the databases by subject list, and then go to subjects, and then scroll to nursing. Thank you, good question. I'm happy you asked that. So why don't we look at UpToDate, because that is an issue, and that is a really useful resource. So UpToDate in general, I'm curious who already uses it on the floor in their hospitals. You do? Yeah, okay, so you were, okay. And when you're using it, are you using it through UNF, or are you doing it from, do you have a separate account? You have a separate account? Okay. All right. So for some of you, you might still be able to get to it even, without needing UNF to have access to it. But UNF does have access. We should be able to get to it, but it just seems like there's a specific issue today. So in terms of updating, because you do have to update every 90 days. That's how often, I think it's 90, right? 45? Yes, 90. So every 3 months, you have to renew your account if you're using the, I think for yours as well, but the one in UNF, that's how our access is set up. So if you click on it, and I'm curious if everyone is universally having the problem, but what happened for me in the earlier today is I clicked on UpToDate through UNF. So I'm on the list of databases, and I clicked on UpToDate, and oh darn, I already signed in. I could sign out though, log out. And I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to click on UpToDate. Oh, it doesn't recognize that I wanted to log out. And then I just logged in with my my IN number and password, and it said, "Hey, great. You know what? This isn't going to work for me because that is not my email. I think I will have to do it separately." But so we can click to UpToDate. I'm happy that it actually is working for me now, because this is my account, not Stephanie's. But if it's not working for you, we do have a guide. So if you remembered, and I was just referring to that nursing guide, but if you remember when Stephanie was talking about we have library guides for different topics, we do have one specifically for UpToDate. I'm going to ask that we tag it a way that you can find it a little easier, because I had forgotten about it because it's not tagged with your college. But if you go to library guides, and this is again if you are having issues, you might want. Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
So if you just go to update.com on the computer,
Okay. Okay.
If you go to the library link, it works.
Well, good, and that's probably what the live guide would tell you, actually. So, but if there are any questions about it, I do want to, since I'm already kind of talking about it a little bit, just where we do have a guide for it that talks a little bit about the database in general. How do you get to it? what kinds of things might you do there? And so I did click on library guides. So I'm on library guides, and now I'm going to search, because as mentioned before, when you got to the nursing database one before, you just went to Brooks College of Health, and we went to nursing, and that was great, except for the fact that this one hasn't been tagged as a as a Brooks College of Health guide. So it's all one word. If you search for up to date as one word. And I did it a little bit fast, but again, if you're not having an issue with it, then you don't necessarily need to follow. So I'm just going to up to date, and you can see that we do have a full, nice guide that talks all about how do you create an account, what can you do here, and it talks a little bit about some additional information on this, about up to date, what is it, how can you get to it, and that kind of stuff. And on the creating account, it has, did you get an email about losing your account lapsing? Don't panic, and it tells you how you can renew your account. So again, if there are any issues, if you are using UNF's subscription, that's great. You're welcome to continue to do that, and as long as you're affiliated with us, and you just have to renew it every so often. But it's not like if you don't renew it exactly at 90 days, it's going to completely lose you, because I hadn't used it in quite a while, and it had no problem. So good. All right, so we're all there now, and that's wonderful. So we are going to click on it, and we're going to do a quick search. So when I was searching before, I was searching with just nitrous oxide, and I found that I think I was starting to write it, and it just automatically did nitrous oxide labor for me. I love it when it does that for me. It's not, it's not as official, but if it does that for you and you actually get to some good results, then I usually continue to use that. So I have I found that there was some really good resources. This was a nice long guide that talked about management of pain during labor and delivery, and again, I was kind of playing around with it before, but this is a nice overall guide, and it's really comprehensive. And then when you start to look at some of the options, there is a whole section amongst all of the other types of pain relief, and what you can find nitrous oxide there. And there's and it does go into how you, what it is, what makes it, how do you administer it, what is the safety, if there are any side effects, and then how, I'm blanking on but how well it actually works. So you can get to up to date, and we do have that access issue. So I'm glad that it's working for you now. So are there any questions about this? If you're already using it, if you're already using it, then you probably can teach me about it, how to use it. So so if that's the case, how are we feeling about now? I know that there are a couple of people who want me to work through Refworks on their individual computers, and I'm happy to do that. So we can just kind of use this time. Are there any questions for me? Do you think that anybody else will have the kinds of questions you have? Are there any concerns about using any of the databases? Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you. If you do have any questions, you're welcome to come up and we can talk later. I know you have somewhere you're supposed to be, but not till a little while. You're welcome to use this room if you want to, since you're here and it's nice. So really, I'll leave it with that. And thank you for your time, and we hope to see you in the future. So great.
Thank you.
All right.